As Xiao Junyao was dodging Lu Mu Yan's variety of attacks, an unexpected vine suddenly entangled his feet. He couldn't avoid it in time and was pulled, landing heavily below the battle platform. The elderly man on the pillar gave Lu Mu Yan a thoughtful look and announced the result: Lu Mu Yan wins, entering the final round. The mechanical voice immediately resounded in the building: Lu Mu Yan wins. On another battle platform, Luo Yi and Chu Han won. When hearing this sound, couldn't help but be surprised. Lu Mu Yan actually beat Xiao Junyao. Chu Han looked at the silver-clothed, brocade man with a grim expression, and a faint smile rose on his stern face. Since they've already decided the winner, then there's no need to delay here. Take out your all to fight me at your strongest. All right. Luo Yi's unhurried voice was very pleasant. After watching the battle between Lu Mu Yan and Xiao Junyao, the sword masters in front of the crystal wall were once again dumbfounded. He lost just like that? One of Xiao Junyao's team members said in disbelief. This is too unexpected. Lu Mu Yan can defeat Xiao Junyao. I feel so unreal right now. One of them touched his chest and said. Lu Mu Yan's various tricks and methods are too many. Xiao Junyao just couldn't guard against it at all. Someone complained. Having so many tricks and methods is because Lu Mu Yan has that ability. If it were you all, can you make Xiao Junyao be in such a sorry state? People who had already developed admiration for Lu Mu Yan retorted. That's right, Xiao Junyao didn't lose wrongfully. What do you mean? Didn't you see that from the very beginning, the battle situation was all under Lu Mu Yan's control? The more Xiao Junyao fought, the more of a sorry state he's in, but Lu Mu Yan's still so calm like the wind and clouds. Even if he didn't lose now, as time goes by, his elemental energy wouldn't be able to support the consumption from his magic tool, and had inevitably be knocked down by Lu Mu Yan. An elite sword master of a superpower kingdom said slowly. You really can't tell just by looking. Lu Mu Yan, this woman, hides so deeply. Many people sighed within. Lu Mu Yan hides deeply, and the one named Chu Han hides even more deeply. Look, Luo Yi's injured by him. Luo Yi actually lost. Just what's Chu Han's background? He hasn't even pulled out his giant sword on his back. The biggest dark horse this year is probably Chu Han. There'll be an interesting show to watch when Lu Mu Yan meets Chu Han. When these two dark horses collide, who do you think will win? Naturally Chu Han. Don't you see that he acts cleanly and decisively in each battle, and his strength hasn't even been fully exerted? He's ruthless and accurate in dealing with each opponent. Such an opponent is too scary. I'm also optimistic about Chu Han. Under absolute strength, all kinds of tricks may not be effective. I'm actually more optimistic about Lu Mu Yan. After all, she's always been able to amaze us since the beginning of this competition space. Chu Han has been firmly first place since the first round. To say that he's also amazing isn't too much either. He just doesn't have as much gossip as Lu Mu Yan, and his reputation isn't as loud as hers either. After Luo Yi lost to Chu Han, the sword masters present were discussing who would win the match between Lu Mu Yan and Chu Han. One of the sword masters who loved to gamble opened a bet and 2/3 of the people bought Chu Han's win. Although Lu Mu Bai and the others didn't like to gamble, but they believed in Lu Mu Yan, so they bet all their belongings down on her. Watching the group of people betting in the big room, the personnel of the organizers who were guarding all around were also itching. There were also small bets in private, and most of them were betting on Chu Han winning. In fact, most people thinking that Chu Han would win was also justified. First, Chu Han's cultivation base was at advanced phase sword sovereign. Lu Mu Yan was an advanced phase sword monarch. He was an entire stage higher than her. Second, Chu Han was vigorous and resolute in his previous battles. He had few tricks, but were all extremely effective, with huge momentum, and his attacks were very ruthless. Meanwhile, Lu Mu Yan, despite all her various tricks, always gave people a feeling that her true strength wasn't that good, and she just didn't win as thrillingly perilous. After all, most of the sword masters present were used to fighting with magic tools and elemental energy. Layers after layers of means like Lu Mu Yan's couldn't be played out by them at all. Therefore, deep-rooted in their hearts, they all believed that Chu Han's fighting style was the embodiment of true strength. Lu Mu Yan's methods, short-term, may be successful, but once others were prepared for it, it would be difficult to win using them. Tomorrow, Lu Mu Yan and Chu Han will fight. The other two groups will fight first. The referee's voice sounded timely. Although the match was delayed until the next day, but Lu Mu Yan and Chu Han weren't allowed to leave their rooms. After the two of them fought, they started to adjust their status after taking pills. On the same day, the last 5 in the rankings were also decided, but not many people paid attention to it. Si Nan and the others left the sealed rooms after their matches and waited with the others to watch the last match on the second day. Of course, as Lu Mu Yan's admirers or friends, they naturally spent a lot of money to bet that Lu Mu Yan would win. First, they just felt that Lu Mu Yan wouldn't lose so easily. If they bet on her, she had more than half of the possibility of winning. Right now, the odds were 1 to 5 if they won, then their winnings would flip 5-fold. Second, if Lu Mu Yan, that petty and sly woman, came out and found that they bet on Chu Han instead of her, she would definitely beat them up one by one. What treatment, and buying pills after that, they definitely would all just become imaginary. In the central castle, the elders of the 6 major sects weren't calm anymore. Who would have thought, who would have thought? Lu Mu Yan and Chu Han would actually be the last to compete for first place. An elder of the heavenly secret palace couldn't help but sigh. Xiao Juniao was already an official pupil of the Heavenly Secret Palace, and they always had high hopes for him. The original certainty of him entering the top 3 just flew away like this. In the competition for the 3rd place, Luo Yi defeated Xiao Juniao too, which was acceptable, but the sudden appearance of Chu Han and Lu Muyen caught them by surprise. I've already said that this girl, Lu Muyen, would definitely amaze and shock everyone, but you old things didn't believe me. The strong and sturdy elder of the 8 Extremes sect laughed, then looked askance at the elders present. What are you being so smug for? Even if Lu Muyen wins the championship, she still won't be your 8 Extremes sect's pupil. The vast mountain sect's elder snorted coldly. Between Chu Han and Lu Muyen, he was still more optimistic about Chu Han. Compared to Lu Muyen, Chu Han was the sword master they wanted to spend the larger effort trying to win over. Even if Lu Muyen doesn't choose the 8 Extreme sect, she wouldn't choose your sect that only knows how to use brute force. The elder of the 8 Extreme sect and the elder of the vast mountain sect hadn't liked each other for a long time. So don't argue anymore. Lu Muyen, a woman, just used the wood attribute elemental energy. She's most suitable to come to our medicine sect to learn alchemy. Enough. As for the belonging of Lu Muyen and Chu Han, they must have already made a choice in their hearts. No matter how much you quarrel, it's useless. Seeing that the elders of the several major sects were arguing about the candidates again, the wise elder from the Heavenly Secret Palace furrowed his brows slightly to stop them. Not only in the Heavenly Secret Palace, but even among the 6 major sects, he was an extremely prestigious existence, so after he opened his mouth, the elders of each sect no longer quarreled about snatching people. How Shan old man, do you dare to gamble with me? The elder of the 8 Extreme sect couldn't help but provoke the elder of the Vast Mountain sect when he saw that the juniors started gambling. I'm pretty sure Chu Han was meant to have had a bye, but now he's battling Luo Yi, so lol. I'm pretty sure author made a slight mistake. XD. The elders of the 5 other sects here obviously didn't expect that the elder of the 8 Extreme sect would open his mouth to provoke, and their eyes revealed a look of watching a good show. The elder of the Vast Mountain sect sneered, how should we bet? As if he'd be afraid of this damned old man from the 8 Extreme sect. Chu Han's strength wasn't as simple as he revealed in the competition just now. Even if Lu Muyen had some ability, she definitely wouldn't win. I bet that Lu Muyen wins. The elder of the 8 Extreme sect said without hesitation, didn't you want my P-quality beast blood for a long time? If I lose to you, ITLL be yours. Alright. I'll bet Chu Han wins. The elder of the Vast Mountain sect was also unequivocal, if you win, I'll give you the advanced level array chart I obtained before. It's a deal. Both of them were satisfied with the bet and immediately high-fived to sign off the contract. Do you all also want to make a bet? The elder of the 8 Extreme sect turned his eyes and looked at the elders of the other sects with a smile. The elders of the other sects were also interested, but as representatives of their own sects, it was obviously inappropriate to learn from the juniors and gather together to start betting. They weren't as shameless as these 2 people, so they all refused. A day passed in a hurry, and the day only just lit up when the voice of the judge sounded in the building. Now, the last battle will begin. Rules as usual. Lu Muyen and Chu Han opened their closed eyes respectively, got up, and walked into the last room. The 2 stepped onto the stage at the same time, and only then did Lu Muyen raise her head to scrutinize Chu Han, this powerful opponent. He was dressed in an entirely black outfit, his facial features were angular and cold, and there was a storm hidden in his dark eyes, but he possessed a wild and uninhibited temperament on him. He was like a king who had been at the top for many years. He was like an eagle that lurked in the dark night, with a powerful momentum, waiting for an opportunity to soar into the sky. Chu Han was definitely the strongest person she had ever met in the competition space. While Lu Muyen was scrutinizing Chu Han was also blatantly scrutinizing her. She had a stunning appearance, and a carefree, otherworldly temperament, as well as an arrogant uninhibitedness that carried a domineering disposition melded well together. This sort of contradiction was very attractive. This woman seemed to be covered by a veil, looming, easily swaying people's hearts, and one couldn't help but want to lift the veil in person. This one is Chu Han. Chu Han's voice was indifferent and coldly proud. Lu Muyen smiled faintly, her voice clear, Lu Muyen. You are the opponent I most wanted to meet in this space. Use all your strength to fight me. A battle intent rose in Chu Han's eyes slowly. Lu Muyen's jet black eyes were dotted with stars, her fighting intent rising, and her red lips parted lightly, all right. She believed that today's battle with Chu Han would be a hearty fight. The 2 of them, who were both filled with fighting intent, didn't notice that the man who was shrouded in black mist in the pendant on Lu Muyen's neck, suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at the Chu Han with a gaze of unknown emotions, and after a while, he closed his eyes again, and the black mist turned to cover his entire figure. The battle begins. Whichever side falls off the stage or admits defeat, the opponent will win the championship in this Tianling Continental Tournament for hegemony. This time, the elderly man sitting cross-legged on the stone pillar was precisely the main judge. He glanced at the 2 of them lightly and announced the start. Chu Han moved first. His entire body was filled with explosive power, and he ran towards Lu Muyen quickly, with a faint layer of black flames covering his hands. When he approached, he raised his fist and bombarded Lu Muyen with punches one after another. Lu Muyen took a few steps back and used flash steps to dodge quickly, her eyes filled with interest, a bit interesting. Unexpectedly, Chu Han was also a body cultivator with a spirit flame. Her blood began to boil, and the strong fighting intent filled every bit of her body. Another punch slammed down, and Lu Mu Yen spun and met it with her punch. Bang bang. Fists collided with fists, and there were crisp sounds on the battle platform. Refreshing. Again. A flash of happiness appeared on Chu Han's cold face. It had been a long time since he fought with his fists like this, and he liked the impact of the power. Lu Mu Yen was also a little bit similar to Chu Han in this regard. The figures of the two flickered back and forth around the entire battle platform, and every time they appeared, there would be a collision of fists. Boom boom. The two fists fought for no less than hundreds of rounds. Aside for the stone pillar on which the judge sat cross-legged, the other three were actually affected by the force of the bombardments and cracked countless crevices. There was a constantly crackling sound in the space, and the scalp of the people watching grew numb. The two of them are so violent. A sword master watching the battle by the crystal wall couldn't help but click their tongue in admiration. The others also shrank their necks. Bombarding with their bodies with such intensity, if one weren't tough enough, they would have definitely long been killed. They had long heard that Lu Mu Yen sometimes fought very violently, and she spoke directly with her fists when fighting demonic beasts, but they never thought that her force would be this powerful. Of course, Chu Han was also very violent. He didn't show this kind of close-quarters combat when he fought with others before. Judging from the expressions on the faces of the two they occasionally revealed, they had met their match, and their fighting spirit was high. Their bodies are as tough as Tier 7 demonic beasts. I think that's close. Chu Han's a man, so liking such a way of battle is indeed gallant, but how can Lu Mu Yen, a woman, like this kind of fighting style? Luo Li glanced at the person who spoke. Lu Mu Yen is also very gallant. At least she's more comfortable to look at than those delicate women who only hide behind men. This was in the eyes of the lover, his beloved was a beauty. Lu Mu Yan's violent behavior indeed didn't look crude. In fact, when the two bombarded each other, they couldn't help but feel their blood boil too. But whoever took her home to marry sure would have some things to deal with. With one wrong, wouldn't they be served with a fist? Just thinking about it made them unable to resist shuddering. Of course, many people also appreciated her toughness. After all, violent and wild beauties were also very popular on this continent. The two bombarded each other for hundreds of more rounds, and the battle platform actually began to feel shaky. Seeing this, the judge on the pillar patted the pillar beneath him and a ray of light flew out. The three stone pillars that were cracked began to heal and the battle platform was supported once again. Pu. The final punch they threw out at each other struck the other's shoulders, and the two of them stepped back together, spraying out a mouthful of blood. The two waved their fists and palms, and they used all kinds of close-quarters combat skills, but they couldn't directly defeat the other party. We won't be able to tell the winner until dawn. I heard that you're good at swordsmanship. How about we compete with swords? Chu Han reached out and wiped the blood from his lips, his whole body aroused with fighting intent. The last time in the melee fight with demonic beasts, he saw Lu Mu Yen fight close-quarters combat, but he didn't expect her physical strength and fighting skills to be no weaker than his, and was even better than him in terms of her footwork. If it weren't for the fact that he had just absorbed and refined a bottle of advanced-level beast blood before the finals and his physique had been further improved, he probably would have been defeated in the direct bombardment just now. Lu Mu Yen wiped the blood from the corners of her lips, appearing happy. I'll accompany you to the end. It was rare to meet an opponent who could match her. How could she not fight with all her heart? She didn't think at first that Chu Han wasn't only just a body cultivator, but also a sword cultivator. She hadn't yet used that set of sword techniques that she had mastered from that earth-rank sword skill. Today, it was perfect to test it out on Chu Han. Previous chapter. The two of them unanimously removed the spirit flames covering their hands and took a few steps back each. Chu Han didn't pull out the giant sword he was carrying, but with a thought, a silver-white longsword was held in his hand and there was a layer of Sanskrit flowing around the sword. Lu Mu Yen beckoned with a wave of her hand, and a golden longsword fell into her hand with a soft hum, a feeling of unity between human and sword. They're going to sword fight. One of the sword masters watching by the crystal wall exclaimed. Could they attack our self-esteem any more than this? These two aren't only body cultivators, but also sword cultivators. Can't they let us elites of our own kingdoms live a bit? One person couldn't help but shout. They're also array masters and smiths. Comparing oneself to another could definitely infuriate oneself to death. Who's a smith? Lu Mu Yen was an array master, that they knew. Of course it's Chu Han. My paternal grandfather is the elder of the outer pavilion of the smithing pavilion. According to him, Chu Han has already obtained the badge of a grade 3 smith. Lu Mu Yen is also a grade 3 array master. It seems their talents are similar. They're similar, but it's not like we can compare. Look, they're starting. On the platform, snowflakes filled the sky. Two figures, one black and one purple, stood independently. Each time the snowflakes fell on the sides of the two, they would automatically separate without sticking to their clothes. Lu Mu Yan's eyes revealed a slight look of surprise. Chu Han's ice elemental energy attribute had also reached the great achievement realm. Chu Han lifted his silver longsword, and layers of water rushed towards her. The sword aura condensed into countless water waves and drowned Lu Mu Yan's entire body. Immediately, the blue water waves quickly froze into ice beneath the swing of the silver longsword. Lu Mu Yen stood quietly, her beautiful face, through the whitened ice statue, was like an otherworldly female celestial. What? Lu Mu Yen was trapped by Chu Han as an ice sculpture with just one move. The people in the hall couldn't help but feel nervous. Lu Muyen was trapped, yet they felt that it wouldn't end that easily. Lu Mu Bai and the others all revealed incomparable worry in their eyes. Chu Han's ice elemental energy attribute had obviously reached great achievement, and he had many means. Lu Muyan's cultivation base was one entire stage beneath his and was her biggest weakness. She wouldn't just lose like this, right? Right when everyone was confused, they only heard a crack from the ice sculpture. The ice enveloping Lu Muyen broke inch by inch, then a green vine emerged from her feet. After bursting the frost open, the green vine gradually extended and grew with luxuriant branches and leaves. The plants under the ground emerged and grew against the wind and snow. After a few breaths of time, the green plants bloomed with large flowers, fresh and beautiful, forming a stunning scenery in the fluttering wind and snow. Lu Muyan's wood attribute elemental energy actually also reached the great achievement realm, heavens. Someone in the hall's eyes widened and couldn't resist shouting in shock. Chu Han's pupils shrank. He knew that Lu Muyen had the fire and metal elemental energy attribute. After guessing that she was an alchemist, he also thought that she could also comprehend the wood attribute elemental energy. However, he had never imagined that although her wood attribute elemental energy wasn't as strong as her fire attribute, but it had also reached the great achievement realm. Such talent was exceptionally rare. In the central castle, the elder of the medicine sect suddenly stood up and stared at the battle platform intently. Lu Muyen not only had the dual talent of fire and wood attributes, but also comprehended both until the great achievement realm. Such aptitude could be compared with that genius of the medicine sect. If she concentrated on cultivating alchemy, then it wasn't impossible to be promoted to a grade 6 alchemist in the future. Lu Muyen smiled slightly, and the golden longsword slipped from her hand, spun in mid-air, then turned into countless golden butterflies and landed atop the bright flowers. The butterflies fluttered their wings with the swaying of the flowers in the wind and snow, and a little bit of dark green powder fanned out from the butterflies' wings. After a while, the originally beautiful scenery changed instantly. The room filled with snowflakes gradually turned black, and finally turned into droplets of black water that fell to the ground. Clusters of flames drilled out from the ground, instantly burning, and vaporizing them. Chu Han's silver longsword shone with a cold light, like a silver dragon dancing, roaring out, blasting out a series of icy hurricanes at the flowers and butterflies. The flowers were blown up and down, and soon a thick layer of frost formed. The butterflies fluttered their wings, turning into tiny golden specks. Suddenly, behind Chu Han, a golden longsword slashed down from the air, its sword aura breaking through the air with astonishing power. Chu Han was startled and waved his silver longsword to greet it. Clang! The golden sword and silver sword interlaced, creating a sharp sound. Crack! An astonishing scene appeared. After the silver longsword in Chu Han's hand clashed against the golden longsword, it quickly lost its luster in an astonishing manner as if breaking rotting wood, and finally cracks formed inch by inch on the sword. The mysterious Sanskrit light wound around the silver sword was covered in a layer of dark green powder, and the sword lost its liveliness. Lu Muyen, from the moment you used the wood attribute elemental energy condensation, you've already planned to use poisonous powder to corrode my silver sword, right? Chu Han's eyes were grim as he gripped the silver sword that had lost complete connection with him, then spoke slowly. Lu Muyen snapped her fingers, and the golden sword turned into a golden butterfly and landed on her shoulder, flapping its wings, lifelike. The sword body transformation was precisely the sword technique that she had learned through mastering a set in that earth rank sword skill. Clever. When she was in the spiritual world, she majored in the cultivation of the dual elements of wood and fire. In addition, alchemists required those two attributes. In the continuous upgrade of her alchemy, she naturally had a deeper understanding of the wood attribute. The green mist sea in her dantian had the effect of bringing forth spring to withered trees, so the wood attribute entered the great achievement realm without much tough practice and insight. Her pill flame also refined many highly poisonous fusions, so what she used her wood attribute elemental energy condensation to make could all be dyed with poison. After she refined the venom sac of that peak phase tier 7 snake demon last time, the poison in the pill flame had also mutated, and it could corrode magic tools beneath Saint Treasure, so that's why she revealed her talent in the wood attribute and condensed plants. The butterflies transformed from the sword body was naturally stained with that kind of corrosive poison too. After Chu Han pulled out his sword, it shattered into gold powder and adhered to the silver sword. Of course, the poison wouldn't cause any corrosion damage to her natal magic tool. Lu Muyen, I really underestimated you. Chu Han put away the silver longsword that had been mostly destroyed, and a nameless anger rose from his chest. Lu Muyen smiled lightly, you're a smith, I believe you can re-refine the silver longsword. With my corrosive poisonous power, maybe you might have unexpected gains. I also gave you this fortuitous opportunity because I fought a hardy battle with you before. Don't misunderstand my kindness. She added with a half-smile. If Chu Han re-sacrifices the sword body with the poison, the quality of the sword would definitely be improved by one level, and it may even produce unexpected effects. The corner of Chu Han's mouth twitched. She was doing this for him? He spent 5 years refining this silver sword through blood and sweat. Now that most of it had been destroyed, it would take him at least another half a year to re-refine it. Of course, the benefits she said did exist, and it made him interested, so when the sword was destroyed, he was only angered, but didn't have the urge to kill. This woman really had the ability to piss people off but not need to pay for it with her life. Previous chapter. The sword fight between Chu Han and Lu Muyen surprised and shocked the audience. In the central castle, the elders of the sword sect stared at the two of them fixedly. A smile rose on his originally serious expressions. Good seedlings. He decided inwardly that no matter what, he would win the two of them over into the sword sect after the finals. Others might not be able to understand, but when they were using sword skills, the sword realm that was naturally triggered by the two wasn't something that ordinary sword cultivators would comprehend. The elders of the other sects glanced at him. They naturally knew whether they were good seedlings or not, didn't need to remind them. However, because of the previous warning from the elder of the heavenly secret palace, this time, the elders didn't quarrel over the matter of the two, but secretly had their own plans. With the talent that Lu Mu Yen and Chu Han were revealing now, if they wanted to get them into the sect, then they would have to increase their stakes. On the battle platform, Chu Han's long and slim eyes narrowed and said, Lu Mu Yen, being able to force me to use Yin Feng, you are indeed very good. Yin Feng? Is that the giant sword on your back? Lu Mu Yen could hear that Chu Han bore slight emotion towards the name Yin Feng. Yes. I haven't used it for 3 years. In the competition space, you're the first to make it reappear. Chu Han nodded. Lu Mu Yen chuckled, then isn't it a great honor for me? The giant sword on Chu Han's back was extraordinary. That was her first impression after seeing Chu Han. Lu Mu Yen, I will use my all, and I hope you also don't hold back any longer. Chu Han pulled out the giant sword from its scabbard, and an aura of deep coldness instantly spread across the entire battle platform. All right. Lu Mu Yen replied decisively. She would respect an opponent like Chu Han. If he could really force out her trump cards, then she would reveal it in front of everyone. After Chu Han drew his sword. A sword master watching the battle turned pale with fright and shouted, Deep Sea Profound Ice Iron. No wonder he didn't use this sword easily. So it turns out that his sword is made of deep sea profound ice iron. Someone stared at Chu Han's black giant sword that glowed with a cold light fiercely. Luo Yi smiled bitterly, so he still had such a means. Big brother, will Lu Mu Yen lose? Luo Li asked anxiously. From what can be seen, she and Chu Han are comparable in strength. But it's not easy to infer after Chu Han uses his giant sword made of deep sea profound ice iron. After all, towards Chu Han, who cultivates ice attribute skills, the weapon can not only increase his elemental energy attribute, but his sword and body could also unify. Luo Yi said calmly. The grade of the deep sea profound ice iron was no worse than Lu Mu Yan's longsword made from heavenly frost golden crystal, and in fact, it was even better in terms of the amplification effect. After all, Lu Mu Yan's longsword was the metal attribute, but she was at great achievement in both fire and wood attributes. Naturally, the amplification effect was relatively small, and couldn't exert its strongest power. The deep sea profound ice iron was an extremely rare earth rank spiritual item, hidden in the deep sea, was very difficult to find, and naturally carried a deep coldness. As long as the cultivation base of the sword master who wielded it rose, their comprehension of the ice attribute reached the perfection realm. After the human and sword unified as one could even freeze up to 1,000 li. On the double-edged sword in Chu Han's hand, there were engravings of intricate patterns, which could make one dizzy if they looked too closely. It was obviously a hidden high-level array. Made of deep-sea profound ice iron, and there's also an array and restriction enhanced by a grade 4 array master. If your sword was refined with heavy water, it could probably reach the level of peak-quality saint treasure. Lu Mu Han couldn't resist complimenting as well. For sword masters who cultivated ice attribute elemental skills, natal magic tools made of deep-sea profound ice iron could definitely rank in the top 3 of their first choice. Her ice attribute comprehension was only at beginner's realm, and even if she had deep-sea profound ice iron, she wouldn't be able to control that icy aura. But she could consider it in the future. After all, she could comprehend all the laws of heaven and earth, and her natal magic tool also needed all attributes. The corner of Chu Han's lips twitched. Heavy water was a spiritual item that even a sword saint powerhouse needed to spend decades to refine. It even required the sword master to be proficient in the water elemental energy attribute. Why was it that when she said it, it was as easy as eating? Do you have any heavy water, Miss Lu? I can buy it at a high price. Lu Mu Yen raised an eyebrow and said with a smile, I can consider selling one to you after I refine it in the future. This sentence even made a cold person like Chu Han roll his eyes. Could a sword master who couldn't even comprehend the water elemental law even refine heavy water? What a joke. His pupils shrank slightly. Could it be that Lu Mu Yen also possessed the water elemental energy law? Then he shook his head. Lu Mu Yen was already a 3-attribute sword master at such a young age, how could she even comprehend the water element? If she really was so talented, then truly, did she not want to let the sword masters of the younger generation live? Then this one will wait for young Miss Lau's heavy water. Although Chu Han didn't think Lu Mu Yen could really make it, but he didn't reveal it on his face. Alright. Let's not speak any more nonsense, let's keep fighting. Lu Mu Yen nodded with a smile. As long as she broke through the foundation establishment stage and condensed her golden core, and more deeply comprehend the water attribute elemental energy that had already reached the understanding realm for a bit of time to the great achievement realm, then it wouldn't be difficult for her to refine heavy water. Chu Han didn't say more either. He held the dark hilt with both his hands and waved it a few times in the air. The double-edged sword made from deep-sea profound ice iron was very heavy and required a strong physique to use. This was also one of the reasons why he worked hard on cultivating body skills. The giant sword only swung a few times, and the temperature around suddenly dropped. A thin layer of ice instantly covered the battle platform. The icy sword aura formed vortexes after vortexes and swept towards Lu Mu Yen. The ice attribute sword aura this time wasn't something the previous snowflakes could compare to. It was simply the comparison between the bright light of the moon and the light of fireflies. Wherever the vortexes went, there was no omission of ice. This time, Lu Mu Yen didn't wait for the ice to hit her like last time. She gestured a few strange Taoist seals with her hands in the air, and the golden longsword in front of her instantly transformed into a golden wall to temporarily block the vortexes before her. Then she tapped her toes, retreated a few meters, and jumped onto a stone pillar. Standing on the stone pillar, she continued to form seals. When the golden wall was frozen by the ice and frost, although the vortexes were weakened slightly, but it was still raging as it attacked. With a flip of her hand, a cluster of orange flames leapt in her palm. In the middle of the orange flame, there was a faint cyan light beating, as if it couldn't wait to jump out. You really do have a spirit flame. Chu Han narrowed his eyes slightly, his expression sinking. As soon as Lu Mu Yan's orange flame appeared, the surrounding temperature rose exponentially, enveloping the icy cold. Go! Orange firebirds flew out of her palms one after the other continuously, raised their heads, made a long cry, and flew towards the vortexes. The icy cold aura of the vortexes quickly dodged after the firebirds swooped over, as if it had encountered some natural enemy, and wisps of steam emerged. The firebirds' humanized eyes revealed a ferocious light, obviously not going to let go of the vortexes that were dodging, and one by one, they flew into them like moths to a flame. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Chu Han felt the trembling from the icy air in the vortexes. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Firebirds threw themselves into the ice vortexes one after the other. Instead of being slaughtered by the ice, however, they melted the vortexes into a pool of water. A moment later, when Chu Han opened his eyes again, there was actually faint dark light in his eyes. A cluster of black flames flew out of his eyes and landed in the center of the battlefield, then he started to brandish the sword based on instinct. Lu Mu Yan's eyes were solemn. She knew that Chu Han's trump cards were all revealed. He also had a spirit flame, and the black flame on him should be the companion flame that grew with the deep-sea profound ice iron, so it was exceptionally cold. But fortunately, the energy in his spirit flame was slightly inferior to that of the orange blaze, and it could compare even less to the purple gold spirit flame. But she was only going to expose the orange blaze trump card today. The purple gold spirit flame couldn't be revealed for the time being. As soon as the black scorch appeared, the surrounding temperature gradually dropped again, and it stopped when it reached a balance. Chu Han's giant sword repeatedly waved around and black sword lights burst out, forming thousands of phantoms that all fell towards Lu Mu Yan with lingering coldness. Lu Mu Yan's metal attribute elemental energy attribute only touched the edge of the Great Achievement Realm and couldn't be compared with the ice attribute elemental energy of Chu Han's that was after the Great Achievement Realm. In addition, due to the enhancement of the deep-sea profound ice iron giant sword, the golden longsword that was frozen earlier could no longer be used flexibly. Her expression chilled, and with a thought, she pointed to the sky twice. Instantly, a cloud of red flames and a cloud of green mist loomed in midair, turning into two huge axes. They slashed down heavily at the thousands of sword shadows that spurred towards her. An axe with a blazing flame and an axe with green auras surrounding it with vitality. This was the condensation of her two primary elemental energy attributes of fire and wood at Great Achievement Realm. The thousands of black sword shadows and two axes were at a stalemate in midair, and they were evenly matched. Neither side could immediately annihilate the other. Chu Han released the huge sword in his hand and allowed it to control the sword shadows in the air. He, himself, took a step forward, and the black scorch in the center of the battle platform that was clashing against the orange flame returned to his hand. One of his hands constantly formed Taoist seals, and the other condensed the black scorch into a dark ball of light, its power transmitting out from his hand. The dark ball of light was covered with a layer of fluorescent light, which looked as bright as obsidian but with a destructive aura, and it steadily converged within the ball of light. Lu Mu Yan, let's decide the outcome with one move. Chu Han raised his head and looked at Lu Mu Yan deeply. At this time, Lu Mu Yan also condensed an orange light ball, and a cyan blue cluster of light sparks flickered in the center of it. All right. That's exactly what I was thinking. Chu Han's trump cards were all out while she couldn't reveal too much. The orange blaze was also considered her trump card, which would make people feel amazed and fearful, but it wouldn't make them want to kill her. But if she released her purple gold spirit flame and the golden needles made from heavenly frost golden essence, then perhaps some high-level powerhouses would aim for both her spirit flame and her golden essence with the intention of looting and killing. The purple gold spirit flame had evolved after swallowing the orange blaze and the venom sac, and was now something that the two spirit flames currently used in battle could not compare to. Even those powerhouses above Sword Saint would definitely be tempted when they saw it. The dark ball of light and the orange ball of light came out from the hands of the two simultaneously. The black sword shadows and the two giant axes in the air were shining brightly as well, only wanting to attack each other immediately. As soon as the two balls of light came into contact, the air of ice and aura of scorching heat instantly scurried in this space, and a dazzling light covered the entire battlefield. Boom boom. The battle platform and stone pillars that had been enhanced finally collapsed under the influence of the power of the two balls. Even the stone pillar under the judge began to climb with cracks, and finally turned into rubble with a huge crash. The judge flew away to dodge. Seeing that the whole building began to shake, his expressionless face couldn't resist but change, and he immediately raised a yellow flag. As soon as the array flag was raised, a light cover with strong, pressuring energy surrounded the battlefield. All the power brought by Chu Han and Lu Mu Yan's two spirit flame balls of light that had merged landed on the light cover and was completely absorbed. After the dazzling rays of light passed, there was dust all around the entire battle platform, and the platform had already collapsed, stones shattered and scattered. Those watching the battle were holding their breaths at this time, quietly waiting for the end of the battle. After a while, the smoke gradually dissipated, and everyone saw a man in black lying on a large rock. At this time, the originally stern-looking, black-clothed man was wearing ragged clothes, his hair disheveled, the skin exposed was covered in blood, and his face was pale while his eyes were filled with disbelief. That's Chu Han. Someone in front of the crystal wall asked in disbelief. Xiao Juniao's expression appeared complicated and sighed. That's indeed Chu Han. His aura is weak now. I'm afraid he's seriously injured. What about Lu Muyan? Someone couldn't help but ask. This was also the question in many people's minds. The elders of the 6 major sects also stared at the crystal wall fixedly, eagerly wanting to know Lu Muyan's situation. In a bit, a figure slowly walked out of the dust. Her face was pale and she was holding a dull, golden longsword in her hand. Although the light purple clothes weren't as ragged as Chu Han's, but it was also damaged in several places. The hair that was originally tied was now softly scattered around her waist, making her whole person appear with a kind of delicate beauty. There was still a trace of unwiped blood on her lips. Her expression was light, but her unbridled self-confidence was still naturally unabated. Using the golden sword as a crutch, she walked slowly to Chu Han. Facing his complicated and deep black eyes, she said slowly, "You lost." Lu Muyan's current situation was actually not that good either. Her internal organs were damaged by the power of the black flame just now, and her spiritual energy in her body was basically exhausted. She never underestimated Chu Han from the beginning, but she also didn't expect that the power of his trump cards would be so powerful. If there wasn't the powerful mental energy barrier to support her, and under the condition that she didn't use the purple gold spirit flame, then maybe she would also be as seriously injured as Chu Han, unable to move, or even fall unconscious. This time, she did win Chu Han, but it was only a tragic victory, which also made her determination to pursue the path of the strong even stronger. She must become more powerful. Chu Han closed his eyes. He didn't even have the strength to move his fingers, let alone the ability to continue fighting back. Yes. I lost. Although he was convinced by the defeat, but the desire to become stronger only grew in his heart. Lu Muyan was indeed a very strong opponent. Even after all his means and trump cards were used, he still lost. He didn't lose wrongfully. The judge's eyes were filled with surprise. In fact, from the beginning of the battle, he was more optimistic about Chu Han. He didn't expect Lu Muyan to not only have such a variety of tricks, but her strength also shouldn't be underestimated. Her win this time didn't have any loopholes to pick. She really did defeat Chu Han by virtue of her strength. Lu Muyan wins the last match. A seemingly faint mental energy entered this room and sounded in the judge's sea of consciousness. After a moment, with a faint smile on his serious face, he said, "On behalf of the organizers, I announce that the champion of this Tianling Continental Tournament for hegemony is Lu Muyan from Yanzhou Kingdom in the eastern region." At this time, the sword masters in front of the crystal wall were eerily quiet, obviously not having recovered from the battle just now. Only after the main judge announced it, was a burst of inhalation in the hall. Lu Muyan actually won the championship. That's incredible. Yeah. The battle between her and Chu Han was so exciting, I'm still amazed about it when I think of it. The battle between Lu Muyan and Chu Han wasn't only a showdown of strength, but also a battle of minds. The fighting methods used between the two were exceptionally exciting. Even a fight between venerable sword masters might not compare. Lu Muyan was at a disadvantageous position from the beginning due to the disparity in cultivation base, but with her extraordinary mind, she led Chu Han into her game step by step. First, she destroyed the silver longsword he was accustomed to using, then used the advantage of the fire and would dual elemental energy comprehension that she had comprehended to the great achievement stage to hold back Chu Han's thousand shadow sword skill he shot from his huge deep sea profound ice iron sword. In fact, many of the people present were wondering how Lu Muyan resisted Chu Han's ferocious black flame ball. After all, if it were one of them, if they directly withstood that move, even if they didn't die, they'd be half crippled. Luo Yi and the others who lost against Chu Han couldn't help but be moved. It turned out that Chu Han was so powerful. They didn't wrongfully lose. But Lu Muyan defeated Chu Han. This also meant that she was stronger than them, and it also aroused the valor of the men. I really didn't expect that. Aside from Lord Luo, those who entered the top 3 this time were actually 2 sword masters from little-known small kingdoms, and I have to admit that they're both indeed very strong. An elite genius from a superpower kingdom smiled bitterly. Comparing oneself to another could definitely infuriate oneself to death. We can't envy their talent. Who would have expected that the trump cards of those two are so powerful? Not only are they both sword cultivators, but they also possess spirit flames. Someone said enviously. Presumably, the two of them encountered a fortuitous opportunity before coming into this space. Chu Han's giant sword is made from deep-sea profound ice iron and Lu Muyan's golden sword is also refined from heavenly frost golden crystal and various rare spars. If it weren't that her metal attribute elemental energy hadn't reached great achievement realm, otherwise the power of her golden longsword definitely wouldn't be weaker than Chu Han's giant sword. After all, the value of the deep-sea profound ice iron and the heavenly frost golden crystal are both earth-rank spiritual items. Lu Muyan's natal magic tool was engraved with a small array to hide the material used for refining the sword body, but in the fight with Chu Han just now, after being frozen by the deep-sea profound ice iron, the array was damaged, and so also exposed its original form. Therefore, it was normal for smiths above grade 2 to recognize its original appearance. TSK, I only thought that Lu Mu Yan's golden sword was very powerful before, but I didn't expect it to be made of heavenly frost golden crystal. But why couldn't we recognize it before? Someone asked in confusion. An array master said, she arranged an array on the golden sword. So that's how it is. There was an endless stream of discussions below, all revolving around Lu Mu Yan and Chu Han. Many even revealed expressions of pain because they had put all their bets on Chu Han. Meanwhile, Si Nan and the others happily took the spiritual stones that they won from betting on Lu Mu Yan. In the central castle, the elder of the 8 extreme sect glowed with an exceptional brilliance, as if he was the one that won. How Shan, old man, give me the array chart now. As expected, this old man has good eyesight. His old face was like a wrinkled chrysanthemum as he smiled. The elder of the vast mountain sect rolled his eyes, displeased, but still tossed him the set of array charts that he had so much difficulty obtaining with an expression as if his flesh hurt. Take it. When he was finished, he cursed inwardly, after lousy digs Lu Mu Yan to the vast mountain sect, he'll make sure you can't even find a place to cry. I really didn't expect that the final winner would be Lu Mu Yan, that little girl. Her talent is indeed extraordinary. The elder of the medicine sect was most optimistic about Lu Mu Yan among the sword masters in this competition. The first condition for an alchemist was for them to be able to possess the dual elemental energy attributes of fire and wood. The deeper the comprehension of the two attributes, the more conducive to improving the grade of an alchemist. Even a grade 4 alchemist such as himself only owned the wood attribute at great achievement realm. If Lu Mu Yan was brought to the medicine sect to train, her future would be boundless. Of course, the other sect elders sitting here all had the same idea in their hearts. They wouldn't miss Chu Han, but they must win Lu Mu Yan. After the competition, Lu Mu Yan and Chu Han didn't leave immediately, but instead, quickly recovered from their injuries in cultivation base. Half a day later, the main judge's voice sounded again in the building. After the finals of the Tianling Continental Tournament for Hegemony is over, us organizers will activate the Great Spiritual Gathering Array a quarter of an hour from now to concentrate the surrounding spiritual force in this mountain forest here. You have 10 days to absorb and improve your cultivation base. 10 days later, everyone will return to the building hall on the top of the mountain to gather, and the elders of the 6 major sects will personally select the sword masters who enter their sects. The Continental Tournament for Hegemony has expressly stipulated that the top 10 sword masters in the finals have the right to freely choose among the 6 major sects, so we will pass the information about the 6 major sects to the identity jade tablets of the top 10 people through an array. You will properly decide which sect you want to join in these 10 days. As for the other 90 people, you will wait for the elders of the 6 major sects to allocate your places. As for which sect you go to in the end, it's not up to you to decide. Alright. The Great Array is about to activate. You can leave to cultivate deeply in the 10 days. Senior Judge, can I ask a question? Lu Mu Yan said after thinking for a bit. The judge was slightly surprised, but he still liked Lu Mu Yan, so he replied, ask. Are we going to be sent out of this space after choosing the sect in 10 days? Lu Mu Yan asked. Yes. After 10 days, the Great Array will teleport all the people gathered in the hall out of this space. Lu Mu Yan furrowed her brows. As expected. Then can we leave this mountain in the 10 days? After hearing her question, many people couldn't help but twitch the corners of their lips. Once the Spirit Gathering Array activated, the spiritual force on this mountain would be several times that of the outside. Only fools would leave this mountain to go out. Yes, but you must come back and gather in 10 days, otherwise it will automatically be regarded as giving up the opportunity to enter the 6 major sects. I've finished asking my questions, thank you Senior for clarifying my doubts. No problem. You can all leave now. Of course, if you choose to cultivate in this hall, you can also stay. Lu Mu Yan didn't leave immediately. After the previous battle, she already felt that a breakthrough was coming, so she closed her eyes and began to cultivate to break through to peak phase Sword Monarch. Chu Han also didn't consider leaving this place to find somewhere to cultivate, so he also sat cross-legged on another side. Many of the people present had no plans to leave. After all, after the Spirit Gathering Array was activated, their goal was to absorb the spiritual force crazily. There was no need to venture out in danger. A small number of people left the hall for various reasons. But Lu Mu Bai and the others naturally remained. 3 days later, Lu Mu Yan didn't go to the lobby to find Lu Mu Bai and the others, but after telepathically sending word to them, she called Yi Qing Han and left quietly. After another 2 days, 2 figures emerged outside the forested mountains of the finals and headed towards a deep mountain. Lu Mu Yan had been thinking about those scarlet bees for a long time. If she was teleported out of this competition space, then she would miss the opportunity, so she couldn't wait as she called Yi Qing Han to go poke the scarlet bees' nest together. Previous chapter. Next. Lu Mu Yan took Yi Qing Han to the place where she provoked the scarlet bees' nest last time. Mu Yan, do you want to contract those scarlet bees? Yi Qing Han looked at the fist-sized scarlet bees with purely red bodies and his scalp felt numb. The scarlet bees were social demonic beasts. If they were separated, their combat power wouldn't be strong, but if they were dispatched in groups, even the powerhouses Sword Venerable and above would have a headache. The scarlet bees had several attributes. Their tail thorn wasn't only highly poisonous, but also paralyzing. It was one of the demonic beasts that human sword masters and many other demonic beasts were most reluctant to provoke. He didn't expect Lu Mu Yan to have ideas for the scarlet bees. At the same time as being helpless, he was filled with pampering. No, I just want to make a contract with the Scarlet Bee Empress. These Scarlet Bees are all grown up, so they won't live long after contracting. And it's a waste of mental energy to contract so many Scarlet Bees. Lu Muyen shook her head. Yi Qinghan understood, true. If you can contract the Scarlet Bee Empress, then each time she laid eggs, the Scarlet Bees would be branded with your mental energy and would obey your commands without needing to contract. However, the Scarlet Bee Empress isn't that easy to contract. The Empress inside has to at least be tier 7, and maybe even tier 8. It's different from other ordinary demon cultivators. Although its own combat power is weak, but there are tens of thousands of Scarlet Bee guards. He thought for a bit then added. Lu Muyen also knew that the Scarlet Bee Empress was difficult to contract, but she had come up with a solution recently. I have a solution, but I need Qinghan to help me. Sure. Yi Qinghan would never refuse any of Lu Muyen's requests and was very happy that she could ask him for help. Lu Muyen was just about to speak when there were sudden bursts of piercing screams from the bee nest in the distance. That voice was filled with extreme pain and exhaustion, and pressure filled the area. It's the cry of the Scarlet Bee Empress. Yi Qinghan's face sank, hearing this sound. She's a tier 8 demonic beast. Do you know why she screamed like this? Lu Muyen looked sideways and asked. She knew the ancient contract skill and knew a lot about demonic beasts, but this was still limited to the immortal cultivation world. There were many demonic beasts on this continent that she had never even heard of before. In the immortal cultivation realm, there were gold-devouring insects but no scarlet bees. The only reason she knew of scarlet bees was because she had read it in the Continental Demonic Beast records in the Academy Library, but the records were only general and not detailed. Compared to Yi Qinghan, who came from a distinguished clan of spirit beast masters, she definitely didn't know as much as he did. She's birthing offspring right now. Yi Qinghan pressed his lips and said, she should have reached the end of her lifespan. Birthing offspring? You mean she's giving birth to a new Scarlet Bee Empress? Lu Muyen asked with furrowed brows. Each generation of Scarlet Bee Empress would desperately give birth to a new Scarlet Bee Empress when their lifespan was near its end, and when she was giving birth, the entire hive was at its strongest. Those Scarlet Bees wouldn't leave the hive no matter what happened. The plan she had prepared before seemed to be in vain. Yes. The center of the hive is filled with Scarlet Bees from tier 6 to tier 7. She's not far from giving birth. The screams just now means that she should have just started giving birth. Yi Qinghan said. Lu Muyen rubbed her chin and sighed. I originally wanted to lure them away from the hive in waves with spiritual herbs that the Scarlet Bees like, but now it wouldn't seem to work. Her initial plan was to make Bing Ji and Yi Qinghan's Golden Eagle King hold the spiritual herbs to lure the Scarlet Bees away, and then she and Yi Qinghan would take the opportunity to go in and capture the Scarlet Bee Empress. Now that the end of the Scarlet Bee Empress lifespan was approaching, even if she contracted her now, her lifespan would only be extended for a few months at most, and the contract value had been lost. Actually, it's not necessarily a bad thing for the Scarlet Bee Empress to die. Yi Qinghan thought a bit, then a wise smile rose on his handsome face. Lu Muyen blinked and asked, what do you mean? The Scarlet Bee Empress is a tier 8 demonic beast right now, so it wouldn't be easy to contract, and it would also be difficult to raise and nurture. After all, she's already used to being the only one in this space. But now that she's about to give birth, we just need to wait for her to give birth to a new empress, and you can directly contract the newly born Scarlet Bee Empress. Yi Qinghan smiled lightly and said. Lu Muyen smiled helplessly, it's a good plan, but I don't know how to raise a Scarlet Bee Empress. Even if the contract is successful, but it'll be difficult for it to survive. She naturally thought of contracting the new Scarlet Bee Empress before, but Scarlet Bees were different from other demonic beasts. The newly born Empress was very fragile. If she took it away from the hive without the method of raising it, then 90% of them would die prematurely. I have its raising method here. Yi Qinghan smiled lightly. With a thought, a jade slip fell into his hand. He handed it to Lu Muyen and said, Muyen, I copied this method of raising from my clan's secret classics. I'll gift it to you now. It's copied from your clan's secret classics? Can you give it to me? If it's inconvenient, then you don't need to. It's not like I have to contract a Scarlet Bee Empress. Lu Muyen didn't want Yi Qinghan to be in a difficult position. After all, the precious secret classics of clans weren't allowed to be leaked by clan pupils. Yi Qinghan shoved it into her hands with a smile, no worries. This is what mother left me. The people in the clan aren't qualified to interfere with me. The Yi clan had regulations that didn't allow the disclosure of the secret classics of how to breed demonic beasts, but this secret classic was left to him by his mother and didn't belong to the Yi clan. It was just that his father had put it into the clan's classics library to encrypt and hide it, but the owner was still him. And his mother once said that if he liked a woman who was also a spirit beast master, then he could copy and gift this secret classic to her. Even if they weren't fated in the end, it could still leave a memory as a souvenir. His mother was a very open-minded and wonderful woman. Lu Muyen saw that although he had a smile on his face, there was a bit of desolation in his eyes. Remembering his experience at home, she couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. Yi Qinghan's mother's background should be extraordinary, otherwise he wouldn't have so many secrets. But also because of this, he must have endured more things than others. Then I won't be polite and ill-accept it. Lu Muyen didn't want to brush off Yi Qinghan's kindness. And she indeed needed such a method of raising. Look at the breeding method of the Scarlet Bee Empress. Let's wait here for her to give birth. Yi Qing Han said. Alright. Lu Muyan's mental energy penetrated into the jade slip and looked at it carefully, becoming more and more alarmed. She would furrow her brows at times while at other times, her eyes would sparkle as if she had comprehended something. This copy of the jade slip contained not only the raising methods of scarlet bees, but also the introduction and raising methods of no less than 100 rare demonic beasts. Its preciousness could only be imagined. After scrutinizing the raising methods of scarlet bees, she just realized that it was indeed fortunate that she had brought Yi Qing Han together. Otherwise, if she raised according to her own feelings, then that new empress might not survive for 10 years in her hands. In such a way, Lu Muyan studied the raising method in the secret classic, while Yi Qing Han cultivated by her side, and 2 days passed quickly. On this day, the sky had only just lit, and the harsh screams in the distant hive gradually stopped. The aura also gradually weakened, indicating that the old generation of the Scarlet Bee Empress was about to pass away. After another half a day, Lu Muyan and Yi Qing Han looked at each other and quietly felt their way towards the hive. Lu Muyan handed Yi Qing Han a talisman when approaching the hive. This is an invisibility talisman. As long as it's attached to your body, and we don't use elemental energy, we won't be discovered. We'll feel our way to the Scarlet Bee Empress nest in a bit and run away immediately after the contract is completed. This was the talisman that she spent a lot of effort refining before, but she didn't expect to use it. Seeing her sneaky, thief-like appearance, Yi Qing Han said with amusement, "All right." After the two stuck on the talisman, their figures and aura disappeared instantly, and they walked quietly towards the center of the hive. The Scarlet Bee's hive was very large, more than 5 meters high, and the outside was filled with tier 6 and 7 Scarlet Bees patrolling back and forth. The Scarlet Bees were a relatively special type of demonic beast, because it was directly birthed and controlled by the Empress of the Scarlet Bees, so their intelligence wasn't that high, and they couldn't transform into the human form. The Scarlet Red Empress needed to reach tier 9 to be able to transform into human form, but her intelligence was relatively high. The two entered the central nest, which was filled with royal jelly, and there was a crooked cave in the nest. Going down the cave, the age of the royal jelly continued to grow and it took about an hour to come to an end. At the end, surrounded by orange-yellow millennium-old royal jelly, Lu Muyan's eyes lit up. This royal jelly was a good thing. It could not only improve one's cultivation base, but also had the effect of maintaining beauty and youthfulness, and was one of the main ingredients for refining the beauty-enhancing pill and the beauty-preserving pill. Qing Han, with this millennium-old royal jelly, we can refine the beauty-preserving pill that helps one maintain youth and immortal beauty. It'll give you a few by then, and your appearance will last forever. Lu Muyan said excitedly to Yi Qing Han telepathically. All women loved beauty, even Lu Muyan was no exception. In her previous life, she took a beauty-preserving pill to stay young forever. In this life, she naturally wouldn't let herself become a gray-haired, wrinkled old woman. Yi Qing Han had a smile on his lips. There's such pills. If Lu Muyan refined this kind of pill, then those female sword cultivators would probably all go crazy. Lu Muyan raised her chin and said with slight tsundere, "Of course. And only I know about the pill formula." The beauty-enhancing pill could beautify one's appearance, and one's face would appear younger and younger, but it was only useful if one took it long-term. On the other hand, the beauty-preserving pill could keep one's youthful appearance forever, but the main ingredients for refining this pill required several rare spiritual herbs and she didn't have it all. When she accidentally broke into this Scarlet Bee's hive before, she already had the idea to take the royal jelly, and when she refined the beauty-enhancing pill and sold it, she would not only make huge money, but it was also a long-term business. There was no figure of the Scarlet Bee Empress here. Lu Muyan used her mental energy to sweep around constantly, then finally discovered that there was a faint aura coming from a piece of royal jelly. She walked over quickly and entered the royal jelly with Yi Qing Han. Sure enough, there was a door made of honeycombs behind the royal jelly. Pushing through the door and into it was a small space. The light in the space was very good, and there were several corpses of the Scarlet Bee Empress within. The newest one's life force dissipated just before they entered, and the corpse was relatively large. Beside her was a crystal clear and transparent honey-yellow bee pupa, with a strong beating aura of life. "Muyan, quickly go make a contract," Yi Qing Han said. Lu Muyan took off her invisibility talisman and walked cautiously in front of the bee pupa. After finding that there weren't any strange changes, she quickly dropped a drop of blood essence onto the pupa. Then she chanted a difficult incantation silently as she constantly formed seals. Circles of jade-colored light covers enveloped her and the bee pupa. After an hour, the jade-colored light cover lit up and turned into 2 streams of light that entered into Lu Muyan and the bee pupa's bodies respectfully. Lu Muyan wiped the fine sweat on her forehead. Although this new Scarlet Bee Empress was just birthed, but its mental energy was exceptionally strong. If it weren't for her mental energy being even stronger than that of the bee pupa, then she would have been backlashed. "Muyan, how is it?" Yi Qing Han asked with concern. Lu Muyan smiled lightly and said, "This bee pupa's mental energy is so strong that I almost failed." "Even you almost failed with your mental energy?" Yi Qing Han said in surprise. "No wonder we've never heard of someone contracting the Scarlet Bee Empress. So it's because their mental energy is too strong and can't be contracted." Lu Muyan's mental energy was several times, or even more than 10 of times his, yet she almost failed. Then it really was that few people could contract this kind of demonic beast. He used to wonder why those high-level spirit beast masters didn't contract social demonic beasts like the Scarlet Bees. Once successfully contracting such demonic beasts, then they would definitely be exceptionally powerful. So it seemed that it was because they were too difficult to contract. Scarlet bee swarms weren't only difficult to find, but also required the spirit beast master to have stronger mental energy than the Scarlet Bee Empress. It truly was difficult to meet those two conditions. Yeah. Fortunately we're lucky. If I contracted the old Scarlet Bee Empress of Tier 8, then I might failed. Maybe I'd even be backlashed at the same time as failing. Lu Muyen sighed with lingering fear. Her mental energy was indeed very strong, but her cultivation base held her back. If she encountered that Tier 8 Scarlet Bee Empress, unless she asked Mo Yen to help suppress her, otherwise her chances of successfully contracting her would be only half. Not good, there's a riot happening among the Scarlet Bees outside. Lu Muyen's expression suddenly changed and she quickly put away the contracted Scarlet Bee Empress and the corpses. Then she took out her longsword and channeled elemental energy into it, and slashed it towards the edge of the nest. The royal jelly flowed out in an instant. With a thought, she put all the royal jelly into her interspatial ring. The interspatial ring refined by Great Master Wu was very large, and had a special independent space, perfect to hold these millennium-old royal jelly. After these were done, the two heard the harsh, buzz-buzz, sounds enter their ears. After the death of the old Scarlet Bee Empress, the Scarlet Bee swarms waiting outside only had a lifespan of at most 10 years. Their mission was to protect the new Empress Bee to be born from her pupa and to breed new Scarlet Bees. And the reason why Lu Muyen and Yi Qinghan were able to succeed so quickly was thanks to the hierarchy of the Scarlet Bees. The Empress nest wasn't allowed to be entered by other Scarlet Bees. However, she contracted the new Bee Empress, so the Scarlet Bees who were waiting outside suddenly had their connection cut off with it, and so the crazy riot broke out. Escape! Lu Muyen grabbed Yi Qinghan's hand and rushed towards the outside of the cave using her flash steps. It wasn't that the invisibility talisman couldn't be used, but once that talisman received attacks, they would reveal their true form and their speed would be even slower. Tens of thousands of Scarlet Bees rushing in would inevitably dispel the stealth effect, and they would be in trouble. Yi Qinghan held Lu Muyen's hand tightly, and a layer of cyan light circled out of his body to wrap around the two of them. He quickly escaped at her pace. As soon as the Scarlet Bees rushed in, they found the two of them and bared their fangs, fiercely spewing a variety of colors of poisons. Lu Muyen flipped her hand and an orange flame jumped out and burned a lot of Scarlet Bees to death. Yi Qinghan constantly slammed his palm wind towards them. His palm wind carried a special kind of elemental energy, making the crazy Scarlet Bees not dare to approach. In the end, the two of them just managed to find a way out from the swarm of tens of thousands of bees. Running all the way, both of them were injured. The two of them continued to condense and support the cyan light and orange light cover, but they couldn't stand the deadly attack of the Scarlet Bee swarm. The Scarlet Bees were like moths to a flame. Even if they died, they wanted to drag them back. In the end, the two had to try their best to escape the Scarlet Bee's nest. The moment Lu Muyen exited, she had Bing Ji return to his original form and escape quickly. But the Scarlet Bees behind followed closely, and if anyone was present, they would definitely be shocked. One would see a huge ice swan flying towards the outside of the mountain as a beam of light, chased by swarms of Scarlet Bees behind. However spectacular and magnificent one pictured this scene, it would be so. Lu Muyen and Yi Qinghan sat on Bing Ji and kept changing directions as they flew, followed by a large swarm of Scarlet Bees. We've been outside wandering for more than 2 days. If we don't go back now, we won't be able to catch up with the selection of our sects. Lu Muyen turned to look at the dark mass of Scarlet Bees and held her forehead wordlessly. Yi Qinghan was also quite helpless. He didn't expect that the Scarlet Bees would chase after them so stubbornly that they couldn't even escape them after 2 days. How about we go back to the top of the mountain? As soon as the Spirit Gathering Array activates, the Great Array around the building will also open, and demonic beasts Tier 9 and below can't get in at all. There are too many Scarlet Bees and they couldn't kill them all at all. Besides, there were thousands of Tier 7s. If they didn't want to die, then they really couldn't fight them head-on. And as long as they were still in this space, these Scarlet Bees wouldn't give up. After all, they had taken their new Empress away. Alright, that's all that's left to do. Lu Muyen nodded in agreement and let Bing Ji fly towards the last gathering place. Half a day later, everyone except Yi Qinghan and Lu Muyen gathered in an open space outside the building. Lu Mubai and the others' expressions were a little anxious. Lu Oli and the others were also filled with worry. He asked Lu Mubai and the others, where did Lu Muyen go? Why hasn't she come back yet? Don't know. She only said she would go out for a few days. Lu Mubai sighed, then said firmly, Yener will definitely be back. The end was getting closer and closer. When the elders of the 6 major sects appeared, the hearts of Lu Mubai and the others sank. When the elders of the 6 major sects arrived at the open space, they immediately found that Lu Muyen was gone. Just when the strong and sturdy elderly man of the 8 extreme sect wanted to ask, suddenly, a cyan blue light rushed over from the distant horizon and 2 figures in exceptionally sorry states leapt off from the cyan one. Everyone looked at the 2 people whose clothes and hair were a little messy. Before they could speak, there was a sudden burst of harsh, buzz-buzz, sounds from the sky, from far to near. Immediately, an overwhelming black shadow shrouded the sky outside the array. What's this? Someone exclaimed. Heavens, why are there so many Scarlet Bees? One of them recognized the swarm of demonic beasts. When many people heard the word Scarlet Bees, their expressions changed greatly, and their scalps became numb. However, as soon as the swarm of Scarlet Bees approached the building, a distant white light cover immediately appeared from the ground and covered the surroundings. The swarms of Scarlet Bees slammed against the light cover shield one after another, but couldn't take a step further. Many Scarlet Bees were even killed by the power activated by the Great Array as soon as they touched the white light circle. Some scarlet bees continuously rushed towards the great array without fear of death, then was finally swept away by a white projection force from the array, finally annihilated in this space. Seeing this, the scarlet bees behind didn't dare to rush forward, and could only glare at Lu Mu Yen and Yi Qing Han with bared fangs. The people present were all relieved when they saw this, then turned their attention to Lu Mu Yen and Yi Qing Han. Lu Mu Yen, this woman, sure could cause so much trouble. Trouble. It's only been a few days and she already attracted such a large swarm of scarlet bees. Didn't she want her life anymore? Lu Mu Yen. Yen, even if you don't want to live, don't harm us too. A sword master who usually didn't like her said with an unpleasant expression. Lu Mu Yen shrugged roguishly and said, I was going to come back to participate in the final selection, but they just wanted to follow me, I can't help it. She and Yi Qing Han dared to lead them here because they knew of the existence of the Great Array, otherwise even if they gave up the selection, they wouldn't bring the scarlet bees here to harm the others. They weren't so cold-blooded. You're distorting my words and reason. The man shuddered when he saw her eyes growing colder, then snorted and turned his head away, saying no more. Lu Mu Yen won the championship in the Tianling Continental Tournament for hegemony. In the future, regardless of which sect she entered, she would definitely be the target of their training, plus her strength was indeed really strong, so it was best not to provoke her. After all, although she attracted the scarlet bees, but they were blocked outside by the organizer's great array, and they weren't in any danger. Seeing that many people didn't say anything, but their expressions weren't that good, after thinking about it, Lu Mu Yen took out a bucket of century-old royal jelly, blinked and said innocently, we were only thinking about how everyone participated in this competition together, but now we would separate, so I should send some gifts, so I went to dig the scarlet bees' hive and get some royal jelly for you all as a souvenir. Seeing her innocent expression and hearing her words, everyone couldn't help but twitch the corners of their lips. Whoever believed in her words was being preposterous. However, hearing her say that, the people present wasn't bothered with holding a grudge anymore. Most importantly, scarlet bee royal jelly was something good. Regular drinking could prolong one's life, and improve cultivation base and beauty. The scarlet bees had the innate talent to hide its aura and it was difficult even for a sword venerable powerhouse to find them. Last time, Lu Mu Yen chased a demonic beast and accidentally entered there, then made a mark, otherwise it would be difficult to find the scarlet bee's lair again if she tried to look for it on purpose. Huh, little Lu girl sure is generous. This century-old scarlet bee royal jelly is a good thing. The elder of the 8 extreme sect happily walked to Lu Mu Yen and looked down at the royal jelly in the bucket, smacking his lips. He loved delicious spiritual items the most, and this royal jelly was one of them. If he could get some to give to a spiritual wine master to brew into honey wine, then its taste could make one drool 3 inches. Honey wine also had the effects of expanding blood vessels, strengthening the body and prolonging life. Lu Mu Yen saw that the red-haired elderly man's nose was about to touch the bucket, and the corner of her lips twitched. But she felt a little more favorable towards his straightforward appearance. The other elders of the 6 major sects also revealed surprise and enthusiasm in their eyes when they saw the royal jelly. How should I address this senior? Due to politeness, Lu Mu Yen asked with a smile. The elder of the 8 extreme sect raised his head reluctantly, his old face smiled into a chrysanthemum. This old man is the elder of the 8 extreme sect, Ao Rong. Why, does little Lu girl want to give me some royal jelly as a souvenir? The other elders of the 6 major sects couldn't help but twitch the corners of their lips. Ao Rong, this thing, sure was so shameless and skinless. To think he wasn't embarrassed to ask for something from a junior. Lu Mu Yen smiled sincerely, sure. Everyone who sees has a share. Not only senior, but also the seniors from other sects. It can also be regarded as a meeting gift from this junior towards seniors. Her subtext actually meant I've already given you a meeting gift, would you be shameless enough not to return the gift? Since she took out a bucket of royal jelly to share with everyone, she naturally wouldn't ignore the elders of the 6 major sects. Lu Mu Yen robbed the entire hive of royal jelly. This century-old royal jelly was actually what she casually swept up on the way out of the cave, and she had hundreds of barrels of it in her space. She also had hundreds of barrels of centuries-old and even millennium-old royal jelly, so it was really trivial to take out a barrel to dispel everyone's grievances and win people's hearts. Seeing Lu Mu Yan's generosity, other people felt their flesh hurt. Didn't she know the value of century-old royal jelly? It would take at least tens of thousands of spiritual stones to buy a barrel like this, was often priceless on the market, and was most popular among female sword masters. Her rich local tyrant appearance that looked like she was saying Laonyang had money really looked like she deserved a beating.